And welcome to the East County Sports Report for Friday, March 19th. Dave, it's week 2 of the prep football season right here in the middle of spring. And now we're springing into full-fledged action. 9 games this Friday night in the East County. 2 of the games will involve a pair of top 10 teams. We're going to kick it off by talking about those matchups. And let's talk about one of the first and best matchups in the county this Friday. It'll be the new number 1 team in San Diego County, the Cathedral Catholic Dons, and they're going to take on the number 9 ranked Steele Canyon Cougars. Dave, the Cougars have had to bring their young players up a little faster than they might have liked in this shortened season, but sophomore tailback Major Gibbons lived up to the promise last Friday night, carrying for a touchdown in his first carry from the line of scrimmage. He also scored on a 16-yard completion from Elia Charismasi, and the Cougars went on to beat El Capitan by a big margin in that game. Dave, this week, a big task for Steele Canyon, but they're going to be at home hosting the Dons.
You know, and every year, Coach Longerbone says, they might be a little younger or down a little bit, and we say it too, and then lo and behold, then the next thing you know, it's I know it's only a 6-game season or 5 games in a scrimmage, but anyway, you look at it, they say that, and then the next thing you know, they're undefeated or they lose only 1 game on the season. However, they did play. I'm going to give this to El Cap. They did play a good, not the best, but they did play a good El Capitan defense. They did have to fight for some of those first points. They weren't able to just run all over them to start with. So I give El Cap some props there. However, the Cougars got the speed. It looks like they got a good game plan, but you better have a really good game plan to play these Dons, because I'll tell you what, they're in a league of their own. And Cathedral Catholic, year in, year out, is always in the top 10. On this one, I'm going to come right out of the gate and just say Cathedral by 14.
Well, Dave, the Dons are already at the top of the charts. They beat Torrey Pines last week, 41-0. Dave, you were at the game last week with the Cougars, and we know that they have one of the top return special teams units in the county year in and year out, and they're already on the board. Remember last year, it took a few weeks to get that first I don't know if we can go to Chinese buffet just yet. Maybe only 25% of the team can go at a time in the regulations, but a 34-yard punt return. Remember, you were right there in the end zone when Adrian Shargwaloff returned that kick for a touchdown. So we know the special teams of the Cougars are already rolling. And who's going to step up defensively this year? Well, so far it's been Spencer Campillo. He had a sack and a fumble recovery for Steele Canyon in that game when they really handled the Vaqueros. These two teams have met 10 times. The Dons have a 7-3 edge. Dave, here's the thing, when you get into seeing who's going to be the best team this season, we know there's no championship, but these elite teams are going to have to knock off one another. And as it stands right now, this is a game on the way to the county championship. The winner of this game will advance with an undefeated record. So pretty big game for Steele Canyon. I agree with you. I kind of like the Dons in this one as well, and I'm taking them by 2 touchdowns. They got an excellent team. They had a punt return of their own last week, 59 yards from Deshaun Swafford. And, of course, their quarterback is Charlie Meyer, the son of the former Notre Dame and NFL quarterback Rick Meyer, and he's looking pretty good so far. And they also have a good back in Lucky Sutton. So I got to take the Dons. I've got them by 2 touchdowns. Cougars are at home. They can stay close. They can keep it within a touchdown. We know they can because of their defense. That's all it's going to take to pull an upset is to keep it within a touchdown and get that last touchdown late and do something, but probably an underdog in that one.
And how about Cougarland? There's actually going to be, as opposed to last year when I attended the Helix, the big game of the year, they're going to have parking. They're going to have plenty of seating for the visitors this year. So I want to give them their shout out that's due. They are going to have some great seating for their visitors. Hopefully they, even with 4 per player, hopefully they allow some visitors in there, but at least there'll be some seating available. I think it's wonderful that they have that now, and spread out that parking for when we get out of this pandemic completely, which is going to be very shortly here. And watch out for the speedy Cougars. But again, I still take the Dons by 2 touchdowns. Moving on.
Yep. Dave, believe it or not, these two teams have never met on the football field, not even when Modern Day Catholic was Marian Catholic High. But this year, these are no ordinary Crusaders. We know Modern Day is coming off a real good season, 7-3 last year, second in their league. Last year, they did beat El Capitan on opening night, but then they lost to Grossmont by 33 points. Now, nearly all the starters are back for Modern Day, and they've got a loaded team. They've got a quarterback heading for New Mexico State. They have a transfer running back coming in with 1,300 yards, and they have a wide receiver who spent all of his career in the Grossmont Conference and has transferred to Modern Day. I'm talking about Josh Meredith, who's played at both Helix and Valhalla. So they also have one of the top defensive players in the nation in linebacker Trey Edwards. You can see where I'm going this one. Dave, Helix never loses 2 games in a row. They're favored in this one, but this is going to be a tough game against Modern Day Catholic. Helix coming off the loss.
Well, I can tell you what, I won't tell you her name because I don't want to fuel anything, but I know that one of our people on our staff definitely want Helix to win this game most spectacularly, and this individual definitely wants Helix to win big. I think that last week Helix they just a little rust. Maybe they were knocking some rust off. I think they're a little underrated, and I think that somebody like Modern Day, I think that Helix is more than capable between rotating. Maybe they're going to rotate the quarterbacks, but the freshman, he did have some shiny moments. I'm not saying that he was 100%, but he did have some good moments, some nice passes, and pretty good accuracy as well. So I think if you keep him standing upright, I think that and get the running game mixed in there, I think that Helix wins this one by 3.
Well, Dave, Rylan Jesse, he's going to have at least 40 more starts in his prep career. We're going to see him for a long, long time. He obviously had learning lessons in that game. He showed a deft touch on some long passes that were just out of the reach of receivers. Could have made a big difference in the game if he connects on those. They were well-thrown balls, just a little bit out of reach. His lessons were learned when they tried to go for a 3rd and 15 from their own 1-yard line and threw a 4-yard pick 6. So these are the lessons you learn as a young quarterback, and that's okay. Making your first start against a top 5 opponent, that's a tough task in anybody's mind. But here you have another tough task with Modern Day Catholic coming to town. But you know what? Christian can rely on Helix can rely on Christian Big Moves Washington. Washington ran the opening kickoff 94 yards for a touchdown last week. He had 174 yards of total offense, and he's going to be the main cog to keep Helix with the ball, keep it out of Trevor Appleman's hands, and try to get Helix the victory. You know, Helix gave up a 50-yard touchdown pass last week, and they'll have to avoid doing that this week in order to win. Helix, like I said, rarely loses consecutive games. The last time it happened, though, was just a couple years ago. Remember, they played that tough schedule and started 1-3. But, Dave, I've got an upset. I've got Mater Dei winning this one by a couple of points.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree, and I do say though that we need to tighten up that secondary for Helix, and I think we also need to tighten up that D line, and like most of these games, maybe it will be a barn burner, and maybe they end up playing it from the trenches, and it's just who ends up turning the ball over more, and who wins the turnover battle. And of course, penalties come into play as well. A good example of that was the Cougars and the Vaqueros. The Vaqueros had more than a handful, a lot of penalties, lost the ball a couple of times, and this here, I'm telling you, if Helix can win the turnover battle, I think they win, but I think they do anyway because they're going to tighten up that D line and the secondary. They're not going to give the ball up, and I think they're going to win by a field goal.
Well, I sure hope so. And I have Mater Dei right now as being underrated in this rank at number 8. So, Dave, we'll keep going with the ranked teams. Next up, the Granite Hills Eagles, Dave. Great win over Valhalla last week. But, Dave, this one kind of sets up kind of funky, right? You remember last year the Eagles were kind of caught in the trap. They had lost 2 big league games to Steel Canyon and Grossmont. They had Helix on deck. They traveled to Lakeside, probably stinging from the 2 league losses to those top opponents. Maybe they were looking ahead to Helix. You can't take anybody lightly. El Capitan won 1 football game last year. It was against the Granite Hills Eagles.
Yes, sir, but I got to say the Granite Hills Eagles, a lot of folks are talking about, they also beat a lesser opponent in Valhalla, and we can't really judge them by that win, but they still did win by an avalanche, and they played great defense. Even they got a great bench, so the depth that the Granite Hills Eagles have too, that just goes to show you it's full of talent. Definitely a senior heavy, I think the most senior heavy football team in the Grossmont Conference, and very good at the skill positions, very good at the defensive positions. And I think, El Cap last year, it's not a fluke, but I think that Granite Hills went in there thinking they were just going to walk over them. I think they are not going to make the same mistake. I think they're going to go in and they're going to play Eagles football, and they are going to go in there, and it's going to be the same game plan as they had against Valhalla. We're going to win, and we're going to go in there, and we're going to win big. The game at Valhalla, they had they called the running clock after the half. So that kind of gave an indication of how good Granite Hills looked. And I'll tell you what, that offense with Justice, he's got so many receivers to throw to, and just the way he steps in the pocket, he didn't even have to really take too many steps. Even a nice little boot to the right, just stepping right into the end zone. His offensive line, it looks like a well-oiled machine. I think this is the year of the Eagle. I have the Eagles winning this one by 3 touchdowns.
You mentioned Justice McComb, and last year in this matchup, he threw a big touchdown pass to Matt Keeley at 65 yards, and Keeley was running down the field. So Keeley's back one of his targets, and also McComb had a 22-yard touchdown run in that game. But, it was Savion Yokley, who's now the Vaqueros quarterback, he had 4 receptions on offense and 2 interceptions on defense in the win last year. He also had 79 yards rushing from his quarterback position in the game against Steel Canyon last week. In last year's game, though, last season's game, the big win, it was Xavier Peace that had the 13-yard touchdown run with 4 minutes left, and that took the wind out of the Eagles late, gave El Capitan that victory. You know, last week, Dave, we think El Capitan, they were on the short side of that score, but remember, they did fumble, I believe, 3 times, giving Steel Canyon some pretty good position. Yeah. So maybe that means that El Cap, even though they were short on the end of the score, remember, they also scored a touchdown at the very end of the game. That was actually Mason Parr that threw the touchdown pass at the end of the game to Antoine Yokley. They got them a late touchdown.
Well, again, I think it also I still want to give props to the El Capitan defense and you know, to the defensive coordinator over there now, Sean McDade. I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, when you're playing in those short field situations, that's putting a lot of pressure on your defense. And the defense was on the field most of the game, so you know in games like that, you got to kind of balance that out a little better. If the offense, if Yokley can get loose and maybe throw a couple of dinks and dunks, maybe that's the formula. A couple of runs, kind of mix it up. Maybe even some screens. I look for the screen as well as far as El Capitan. But on the other end, I think that the Granite Hills defense is looking for stuff like that, and they are very fast and very athletic. So, again, I think Granite Hills, unfortunately for the Vaqueros, they got a 3-touchdown advantage easy.
Yeah, I've got them by 3 touchdowns, and don't be surprised if Joaquin Thomas Jr., he had a big game. He had 4 touchdowns, including runs of 60 and 64 yards. Think of the running backs in the Grossmont Hills League this year. You have Thomas Jr. of the Eagles, you have Givens of the Cougars, you have Washington of the Highlanders, and you have Tucker of the Foothillers. Wow, 4 great backs on the teams, 1 on each team in the Hills League. Just
now, here's the key, though. Here's the key. But you got those great running backs, but who has the best quarterback out of those teams that have the great running backs?
Well, you're the analyst, and that's for you to comment on. Let's talk about one of those teams. Let's get to see the debut for this season of Robert Tucker and the Grossmont Foothillers. Dave, the winner of Friday night's game between West Hills and Grossmont, will have the all-time series lead. Each team has won 14 times in this series, but of course, it's the Hillers that have won 7 straight meetings. Dave, West Hills hasn't defeated Grossmont since 2008. The Foothillers, they didn't have a game last week. They were supposed to play Mission Hills. Mission Hills, I believe, ended up as the only team that had to cancel their game as a direct result of the health protocols from the pandemic, and they had to suspend their team activities. The Wolfpack, meanwhile, they were able to get their scrimmage in against University City, and quite frankly, they looked pretty decent. I saw some of the highlights on TV. So the Wolfpack and the Foothillers, Dave, could see Robert Tucker.
Well, I think that the one thing that we can't we can't forget, though, is West Hills this year is they don't have as many players on varsity as they typically would, and I think that the biggest key is it's more of from what I understand, a novice team this season. Whether the players quit or injured or just ended up playing a different sport, whatever the case. It is a novice team this season, but that doesn't take anything away from the Wolfpack having a novice team, so they have a good mixture there. And then after that, like you said, the against the Centurions, they Centurions are probably not in the class of Grossmont. The Foothillers definitely are going to come out of the gate with a high-powered offense, especially in the backfield. And then we'll see what Justin Brown. We'll see what he's got up his sleeve. And we've saw Odom back there for so long. Let's see what Justin Brown can do. And between Brown and Tucker, and a pretty good defense too. We had one of them a couple of weeks ago, along with Coach Carlo, and talking up that big defense, and also that the secondary was pretty speedy. So with that being said, West Hills has their work cut out for them, but I think they're going to play 100%, as all of Coach Casey Ash's teams play 100%. I don't see a blowout, but I do see Grossmont winning by 10.
Yeah, Dave, we had Blake Keeling was our guest with the Grossmont Foothillers, and he's coming off that great season, 53 tackles. He's the leading returning tackler on the team. Matt Diaz, 39 tackles and 2 interceptions in 2019. So, yes, that defense is good for West Hills. Yeah, you're right. When we had them on, they said a little bit of rebuilding for the Wolfpack, but they, are used to that necessarily. They've always plugged them in real nicely. This is just a tough test. Quarterback Braden Oberg, he had over 500 passing yards last year, and we had Brendan Green. Remember, he had over 350 all-purpose yards. He's a threat for them. And some of the defenders, we had Ryan Nicholas, remember, on that show as well. And don't forget about junior standouts, Dylan Freund and Dylan Snyder. Dave, the Wolfpack kind of says that their season hinges on the games against Santana and El Capitan, especially for this shortened season. So this will be a tough game. And I will tell you this, in talking about all the teams from the Hills League, and you're talking up the Eagles, and Highlanders are 0-1, the Cougars and their result. But, interestingly, Grossmont's junior varsity went 10-0 last season. So they've already talked about, and when we talked to Coach Carlo, he was already touting those up-and-coming players. So we'll see. It could be a situation where Grossmont, we have you always say, which do you like, Dave, the polls or the computers? Here, Grossmont is number 15. I'm using the media poll this week for our poll. So Granite 12, Grossmont 15. And I'll tell you this, that the media poll has these East County teams a little bit higher than the computer polls. So, by the way, and I'm sorry, I've got Grossmont by 4 touchdowns. So.
Wow.
Okay. I didn't know if you had a comment on what I said there. Okay, Dave, a game that you're going to try to get to. We'll see. Christian at Mira Mesa. Dave, we get to see the Patriots. The Danny Mitchell era begins, Dave, for the Christian High Patriots. Look, it's a match made in heaven, isn't it? Gabe Krug and Danny Mitchell. Of course, Mitchell, he groomed now Notre Dame he's a freshman, soon-to-be freshman quarterback, Tyler Buckner, and now Mitchell over at Christian gets to work with Gabe Krug, who, by the way, his recruiting process is open, and Gabe can he can really turn some heads. Here's a guy who was headed to a Division I school. Maybe there's going to be some different opportunities out there, maybe some better opportunities, especially after Coach Mitchell gets done with them over the next 5 weeks.
And I quote, Coach Mitchell actually said that he thinks, although Buckner has gone over to Notre Dame, that Gabe Krug could end up being a better quarterback.
Whoa, Dave! Whoa, censor yourself.
I will not. I
don't want you to hurt your credibility here.
I think it's very possible. Just because somebody well, look, we've seen it before. We've seen it, and not to offend anybody, but we've seen our running back from Monte Vista, a man among boys, in Jamon McClendon. He chose not to go to San Diego State, decided to go a little higher, go up to UCLA. Me personally, I think that if he would have stayed down at San Diego State, I think they would have groomed him, and I think that he would have been a starter for San Diego State, and I think he would have done big things. That's just personally. So I
don't want to be critical of your comments because actually you said you were quoting Coach Mitchell. So I'm just wondering if that's actually Coach Mitchell is a rah coach. There's no doubt about it. So I don't doubt that he may have said something to that effect. His career path could mimic his somewhat, or that he could get another Division I opportunity, that sort of thing. It sounds like to me.
I think, and here's the thing: he had to learn a whole new offense. Gabe did, but he said that Gabe is just he's a fast learner. His football IQ is phenomenal, and he just the way he moves in the pocket and the way he scrambles as well. I mean, he's got everything. And the main thing that he said about Gabe is that he is one of the toughest kids he's ever seen, taking some of the hits that he took. And the previous coaching staff said the same thing. He would take some pretty serious hits, and tough kid, get up, dust himself off, no talking, and get right behind center or shotgun. And next thing you know, he's throwing a touchdown pass. So just an all-around great athlete. And then he's got plenty of great hands out there also, Ramon.
Oh, well, Dave, if there's anybody who is going to be a great compliment this season, it's senior Jack St. Fleur. St. Fleur, his career has had some setbacks at Christian High, and he's finally healthy now. And if you look at the way he just looks right now, I mean, he's a completely different man. And I say man out there. I mean, before he was a young man who played great football when he was out on the field, but now he just looks like a different athlete, and a guy who, another one where Coach Mitchell, we've already spoken with the Patriots, talking up Jack's game. And if anybody can benefit from this shortened season, it's a player like Jack. He's ready to show out, especially in, you mentioned a new system, but as great as the Patriots were, you have to think that this is even going to be more spectacular with Mitchell, coaching it, and a great offensive line too, led by Andrew Carlick. They should handle Mira Mesa. Dave, Mira Mesa lost to Scripps Ranch 21-0 last week and had just 55 total yards. And for Christian High's defense, who has some nice players returning, Andrew Young, Alonzo Glenn. Glenn had 3 sacks in the win last year when Christian High beat Mira Mesa 28-10. So,
and let's not forget about our friend Andrew Fierro that we had on one of our shows as well for the Patriots. And I also just wanted to say another quote from the previous administration. David Beazer said, as he said, he didn't leave the cupboard bare, but I will say, yes, he didn't leave the cupboard bare, but I think that Mitchell, Coach Mitchell and Athletic Director Mitchell, I think that he is going to groom these guys into some fine thoroughbreds, if you will, to win quite a few games. Don't be surprised if Christian ends up losing no games or 1 at the most.
I've got him. Yeah,
I'm going to go with Christian on this one by 3 touchdowns.
I've got Christian by 3 touchdowns as well, Dave. We're on, man. Second week, you and I are on target. Dave, the Monta Vista Monarchs are the back-to-back champions of the Grossmont Valley League. They're making their season debut, and this is an interesting matchup. Dave, if there wasn't a pandemic, if we were playing a real season back in, November, this would be one of the biggest games of the season in the Grossmont Valley League. You figure you've got Monta Vista and Valhalla, Valhalla coming back down in this league. They're relatively close in the computer rankings. This figures to be a close ball game. The Monarchs always with a great running back. This time it's Lamonte Jenkins. We had him earlier on the shows with the Monarchs preview. He's got a typical Monta Vista offensive line, if you will. Aaron Bustos, Adrian Ortiz, Jesse Schrader. Dave, the Monarchs are going into Valhalla. We saw Valhalla lose that game last week by a big margin. They're going to be more competitive in this game.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one. I think that Monta Vista is going to do what they do most famously and has worked for them for several years. I think if it's not broken, don't fix it. I think that they are going to pound the ball as long as they can and pick up if they can pick up those big chunks and then maybe a little bubble screen and then maybe a quarterback run. I mean, it's just the little things, the fundamental football. If you watch Coach Yamamoto and his style, it reminds you of some of the teams in the late '80s. The way he lines up, and it's just in the I formation, and I really appreciate that because it's not too fancy, but gosh darn it, he gets it done. And he, as we mentioned, and we had him on last week, he's one of the most winning coaches in the Grossmont League. And especially in that valley, he's really done some big things, including last year, again, becoming the champions after they started off rough, playing those non-league games, very smart, playing those fast, speedy, and stronger teams than they were, and getting all the bugs out so they could play league play and sweep them out, including the best Santana Sultans team to date. So, with that being said, and after seeing Valhalla get rolled over by Granite Hills, I'm going to take Monta Vista by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Dave. Well, last week, Valhalla, they weren't without their moments in that game against Granite Hills. They had a 71-yard touchdown from quarterback Tommy Logan to Marcellus Childs, and also Miles Tomlinson, 4 catches for 39 yards. Luke Pillsbury at quarterback. They shared time, Logan and Pillsbury. Yes. Pillsbury, though, he did have 113 yards of total offense. He also rushed for 53 yards. I think the most intriguing thing, Dave, listen to this, though. We think of where these teams are now, and I've got this a close game also. I'll give you my prediction in a moment. This might surprise you. Valhalla has won the last 8 meetings between these two teams. Monta Vista hasn't beaten Valhalla since 2004. So that's interesting. Monta Vista leads the all-time series 23-13-2. I've got the Monarchs by a point.
This is the year, and I'm telling you, I got at least 2 touchdowns.
Okay. Sounds like we're not quite on the same page as that one, even though we have the same winner. Dave, here's another game that actually has a little bit of intrigue, kind of an interesting matchup. The Mount McGill Matadors and El Cajon Valley Braves are going to make their season debuts. The Braves got a chance to scrimmage against Santana last Saturday, and all the reports were positive from Coach Nick Osborne. While Mount McGill, they had their scrimmage against Westview scrapped maybe a day or two before that scrimmage was scheduled to take place, but we're just waiting to see Matador quarterback J.D. Laverdier as he figures to pick up where he left off a year ago. The Matadors' all-time passing leader may have lost his record-setting receiver, but, Kojo Miller, he was no second fiddle, Dave. He had 48 receptions last year. That would be amongst the leaders in the Grossmont Conference if you didn't have Jaheim Allen Pompey. So, and also Jojo Castillo. We know he's a pretty good baseball player, but he also is going to probably end up with 30 catches or so in this shortened season. He had 16 catches last year, including 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions on D.
Well, interestingly enough, more to that story. The Westview and then Mount McGill ended up scrimmaging themselves, which was even more interesting. Coach Mike Mitchell actually called on behalf of Dan Mitchell due to the fact that they couldn't play scrimmage their team either, and so they were looking. He called me and he said, "Dave, is there anybody that you know that needs a team to play? We're ready to go." I said, "Well, you should contact Troy Star. I believe they're scrimmaging themselves, so that would be excellent spot for you guys." Unfortunately, Mount McGill and also Grossmont did for their own reasoning, but they both turned down the Patriots. Well, one thing to note though, the Patriots did scrimmage the Foothillers 2 years ago, and if you want to go by the score, the Patriots did pretty much own that matchup that particular afternoon. Not that might have something to do with it. Maybe they're worried about injuries. There could have been a lot of things that come into play on that. But at any rate, just thought I'd add that in there. And I'm going to give you my pick. And the way that Elkhorn Valley played last year, started off, I believe it was 4-0. And based on the scrimmage and even what the Santana coaching staff had to say about the Elkhorn Valley Braves, about how classy they are and the way that they conduct themselves on the field. And we all know Clarence. He's just been fantastic. I think he's going to be huge in this game. And I think Joe Malone is going to be looking his way more than once in this one. And don't be surprised if Joe decides to scamper on in and maybe run a boot. You never know. Coach Nick has a lot up his sleeve. But don't forget, Coach Clifton Thomas, he also has some great plays up his sleeve. So you never know what's going to happen there. And they have similar numbers. Their numbers are down typically. They do both go both ways. JD, great passer, like you said, and he should have those deep 40-yard passes, 50-yard passes to get those big chunks. But let's not count out the Elkhorn Valley secondary to be there to possibly break it up. So this one's actually a little tough, and I think one of the better games to watch on Friday night. And I would say if you're looking for a barn burner, this definitely would be one. I'm going to say Elkhorn Valley. Sorry, JD, great quarterback, but Elkhorn Valley at home, I'm going to go with Elkhorn Valley by a touchdown.
Oh, boy. All right, Dave, I like that. We got our first upset special, it sounds like, of the season. Now, last year, Dave, Laverdier ran for threw for 4 touchdowns. He ran for another. Mount McGill won the game 49-7, but that was in Spring Valley. We know that Elkhorn Valley, coming off a great season, really, 4 victories. They had the playoff victory, remember, 33-0 over Mountain Empire. And, of course, you were talking about Clarence Johnson. He's right up there as one of the best players in the Grossmont Valley League this year. He's headed for Black Hills State, and I think they're going to be excited to have a player like Clarence. You know, we really maybe didn't we saw some great things from Clarence. You know, last year they had Demarius Hyde also, and he was a spectacular player. And this year they might rely more, at least 4 spectacular plays on Clarence. That's what we're expecting from Clarence. But, you know, Joe Malone, he passed for over 750 yards last year, and he also recorded 3.5 sacks for the season, as did teammate Wendell Walcott. Don't forget about Wendell. When we talked to the Braves, we barely snuck Wendell in at the end, and we know what a good player he is for them. But also watch out for the Braves, Jaden Barnett. He's quite a basketball player, but he was second on the team in receptions last year behind Clarence. And he's also a two-way standout, like you said, like many of the Braves. And I agree with you, Dave. I think this one's going to be closer than last year, although the Matadors have won 9 straight and the Braves haven't beaten Mount Miguel since 2001. The all-time series, 53-8-1. I've got Mount Miguel by 2 touchdowns. Okay, Dave. The Santana Sultans are going to make the trip out to play the Kearney Comets. Dave, interesting to note here that Santana played Kearney back in 2015. It was the first night game ever at Kearney High. They redid their stadium. They had lights for the first time. They told the neighbors to shut up. They finally got out and played a night game, and what happened? Frankie Gutierrez had 4 touchdowns. The Sultans won 59-19.
Well, I tell you, I think I just think that Santana, Coach Estes, both Coach Taylor Estes and Tim Estes both say they got a younger team, and Tim Estes switched over to the D coordinator, so they've kind of flipped things around a little bit. You lost Nate Temple. Taylor Estes was quoted as saying that Drew Temple, Nate's younger brother, will fill Nate's shoes quite nicely. And from what the comparison was is Nate was the type to try to fit one in there and kind of a Brett Favre squeeze one in there to get that touchdown and win that one, which he slung quite a few touchdown passes. So his brother's got his work cut out for him. But they said that, and his own brother said it of Drew, that he definitely is going to be one to think a great IQ on throwing the ball. And I think that Drew should be looked upon as they didn't really lose much at quarterback. That's for sure. And let's look at the defensive side of the ball, too. I love the name still. Michael Richter, the Richter scale. I think he's going to have quite a few sacks this year coming off that edge. I would be, if I was the Comets, you better tighten up that line because he's going to be coming in there pretty ferociously. And don't know too much about the Comets this year. But although young, I think that Santana still has a little bit more experience because they had some of these younger players last year. They got to watch some of these others play in one of their biggest games of really not of just their career, but the biggest games in Sultan history. So I'm going to have to go on this one. Santana 14.
Yeah, Dave, Michael Richter, he registered 19.5 sacks in one season last year. That's incredible. For the Sultans on offense, they lost their record-setting receiver to graduation, but Jared Forster, the senior now, he caught 37 passes last year. Also want to mention on the offensive line, we had him on our show. I just like saying Gumby. Andrew Golombiski, he told me how to say it, and I probably said it wrong. So, Gumby, here's to you. Have a great season. And linebacker Nick Brace, he's the team's second leading returning tackler. Dave, you said we don't know too much about Kearney. We do know that their well-respected head coach left for Hoover. They scrimmaged Hoover last Friday night. Their quarterback is a sophomore, Roland George. He threw 2 touchdowns in the scrimmage against the Cards. And also watch for Comets senior James Amos. He had an interception and a touchdown reception in the scrimmage for the Comets. So I'm going to take Santana by 10 points.
All right, they're going to watch enough film and they get enough experience. Santana should be able to take care of them.
Dave, the Redhawks lost their first ever overtime game last Friday evening, 12-6 against visiting Maranatha Christian. You know, I watched the game, and I swear that Maranatha lost this game to Mountain Empire 24-12. But there were 3 touchdowns called back due to penalties. One of them for sure, probably a penalty. The other 2, I don't know. But Mountain Empire wasn't home, so we can't call up any home cooking or anything like that. They just had 3 touchdowns called back. You know, Marcus Smith, he had a great touchdown reception. He had 2 long touchdowns called back, nullified by a penalty. So Larry Clark did a great job with a pair of sacks. Mountain Empire had 6 sacks in the game last week, but Vincent Memorial, meanwhile, they rolled to a shutout win, 37-0 over El Centro Southwest. They turned 3 turnovers into touchdowns early. These teams played in a pretty even series all time. They've split the last 10 matchups, Dave, but Vincent Memorial's a big favorite here.
I'm sure they are, but you know, this is pretty much how Coach Van started with his previous team. You know, with Gabe Hydorn behind center. You know, a really young team, a lot of them freshmen, and had 4 years with almost the whole team, groomed them up, and you know, at each year they got better, and eventually went to a CIF playoff game, and I want to say that they won it actually. Also, I believe it was Army Navy that they did beat. However, this team, a little younger, but I think they do have an outstanding receiver, DB in Marcus Smith. I think he is a very talented kid on the field, and I think they rely on him heavily. And as long as they get him the ball, I think they're going to score. But sounds like they got a pretty darn good defense. Larry Clark, like you said, fantastic also last week. So I am going to throw in another upset over Vincent Memorial by 3.
Okay, that's a big upset. I've got Vincent Memorial by 3 touchdowns in this one. Dave, you got to be excited. This is the real deal now. Full slate of games, less than 24 hours away. Football's officially back, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right. For Dave Dickens, I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you for joining us.